Your father's weakness isn't my concern.
Neither is your authority anymore.
The echo of her voice still burns behind my eyes. Sharp, polished, venom wrapped in protocol. Patricia Langford stood on my porch that afternoon, pearls gleaming like warning lights. Behind her, a dozen neighbors watched, arms crossed, lips tight, waiting for their queen's next decree. My 5-year-old Noah clutched my leg, still in his little dinosaur pajamas. "Your son," she said, "has been waving a weapon." It wasn't a weapon. It was a wooden practice bow, one I built from scrap oak so he could strengthen his arm after chemo. But in the kingdom of Hawthorne Bluffs, truth bends under the board chair's will. I didn't answer right away. The enforcer in crimson always wanted reaction, rage to feed on, fear to broadcast. Instead, I let silence hang until even the wind seemed to pause. Then I spoke the one sentence that cracked her composure. I trained half the cops in this county to read ballistics patterns. Her smile twitched. Just for a heartbeat. She knew what that meant. Every accusation would have to stand against someone who could prove angles, residue, intent. Still, she didn't back off. Tyrants rarely do when they think the crowd is theirs. If you've ever watched someone look at your family and see a rule instead of a heartbeat, hit subscribe. That's when I decided I'd record every interaction, every notice, every word that fell from her painted mouth. Because control leaves fingerprints, and I'd learned long ago how to trace them. I'm Ethan Cole, former forensic ballistics specialist. I left the badge when Noah got sick, traded evidence rooms for hospital corridors. My wife, Jenna, teaches 3rd grade. She used to believe in neighborly decency. After that day, she started drawing the blinds. The clipboard queen made it her mission to break us politely. First came the written safety concern stapled to our mailbox. Then the community wellness inspection notice taped to our door at midnight. By week's end, a photo of Noah's toy bow appeared on the neighborhood forum captioned potential threat. Still, I tried reasoning. I emailed her copies of medical letters showing Noah's therapy schedule, explained the exercise program his doctor approved. The officer of rules replied with a single line: "Health conditions do not exempt residents from compliance." That line sits heavier than any bullet I've ever examined. I promised my son the world outside wasn't as cruel as the hospital room. Patricia made that promise feel like a lie. And maybe that's what hurt most, watching kindness become a violation. The night before everything shattered, I walked past Noah's window. He was asleep, the bow resting beside his pillow. The oak frame gleamed under moonlight, the same oak his grandfather had milled before the HOA banned non-compliant lumber structures. Dad used to say wood remembers touch. I swear that bow remembers fear. If you've ever felt powerless against people, hiding behind authority, you'll understand what came next. At dawn, the tyrant in heels arrived again, this time flanked by 2 security guards in matching navy jackets. Cameras from doorbells blinked like witnesses as she waved a clipboard high. Violation notice number 41. Unregistered weapon on private property. She called it an enforcement. I called it escalation. I stepped onto the porch, calm but cold. "You ever point that pen at my son again?" I said quietly. "Make sure you understand what intent looks like." She smirked. "Are you threatening me, Mr. Cole?" "No," I replied. "I'm reminding you, intent leaves residue." Her jaw tightened, the crowd shifted, and somewhere between her pen stroke and my pulse, I realized this wasn't administrative anymore. It was personal, and it was only the beginning. If you've ever stood face to face with someone who mistakes power for purpose, stay here. What happened next turned an HOA policy meeting into a statewide investigation. The morning after that confrontation, I found the first official notice nailed to my fence. Not taped, nailed, like a warning carved into wood. Failure to comply with community safety standards. Immediate review pending. Her signature sprawled across the bottom. Patricia Langford, bold and deliberate, like she wanted the ink to leave a scar. Jenna read it aloud, voice trembling. "Immediate review?" she said. "We didn't even get a hearing." "That's the point," I told her. "They're not following rules anymore. They're rewriting them." The HOA's page lit up by noon. Child endangerment, reckless supervision, armed violation, lies spreading faster than reason. The board chair had turned our private life into a public headline. but something about the post bothered me. The wording was too clean, too coordinated. It wasn't an impulsive smear, it was a campaign. I recognized the rhythm of manipulation. I'd seen it in interrogation rooms. Start with fear, amplify shame, isolate the subject until they break. Patricia was doing the same, just with signatures instead of handcuffs. By evening, a patrol car crept down the street. Not police, HOA security. 2 contractors in black polo shirts, body cams flashing red. They parked outside my house and watched without moving. That's when I realized she wasn't just enforcing policy, she was testing control. The enforcer in crimson had always craved an audience. Every inspection, every fine, every public meeting was a stage performance. A way to remind everyone she ruled this manicured little empire. Her power didn't come from the bylaws, it came from fear. But I wasn't about to give her the show she wanted. I set up cameras, real ones this time. Professional-grade surveillance with motion capture, timestamp syncing, and remote backup. Every time her team approached my property, they'd be recorded from 6 different angles. Jenna asked, "You're really doing this?" "I'm documenting intent," I said. "The only language tyrants understand." 2 days later, she called for what she described as a neutral review. I should have known better. The meeting took place at the clubhouse, a sterile, echoing hall that smelled of cheap polish and entitlement. Patricia sat at the center, a glass of water untouched, her pearl necklace gleaming under the fluorescent light. Around her, the other board members fidgeted like school children waiting for their cue. She began with a practiced sigh. "Mr. Cole," she said, "we all respect what you've been through with your son's illness, but safety is non-negotiable." Her voice was honeyed poison, slow, deliberate, lethal. I looked around. Every camera was pointed at me, not her. The clipboard queen had staged this perfectly. She wanted footage of a father losing control, not a woman abusing power. Then came the evidence. Printed photos of Noah holding the wooden bow in the yard, his hospital bracelet still visible on his wrist. She slid them forward. "This," she said, "is why the neighborhood feels unsafe." I didn't speak. Instead, I let the silence crawl between us until it pressed against her confidence. Then I said quietly, "Do you know what that boy was fighting for when you took that picture?" She blinked. "Excuse me?" "He was fighting to lift his arm again. You turned his therapy into a weapon." The officer of rules shifted in her seat, a flicker of discomfort cracking her rehearsed calm. Around the table, a few members looked down. Even fear has limits, but she recovered fast. "We all have to make sacrifices for order," she replied smoothly. Order. That word always sounds noble when spoken by those who never bleed for it. When I left the room, I knew the battle wasn't just administrative anymore. It was psychological. She wanted me isolated, reactive, cornered. But I'd seen how predators operate. They test boundaries first. Then they push. That night, as Noah slept, I sat at my desk reviewing the day's footage. The cameras had caught something she didn't expect. Her security team entering my yard without warrant or notice, one of them pointing at Noah's window. My stomach turned cold. This wasn't about compliance anymore. It was about control. And the clipboard queen had just crossed a line that law couldn't excuse. The next morning, I woke to the sound of gravel crunching outside my window. Through the blinds, I saw Patricia Langford standing on the curb, her red blazer glowing like a warning flare against the gray dawn. She wasn't alone. Beside her stood Tom Alvarez, the HOA treasurer, a man whose conscience always seemed 2 steps behind his loyalty. He held a clipboard close to his chest, eyes darting anywhere but at me. The board chair was speaking fast, gesturing toward my driveway, the mailbox, the small camera dome under the porch light. Whatever she was saying, Tom didn't look convinced. When I opened the door, Patricia's tone shifted instantly. The smile she wore wasn't for me. It was for the onlookers she knew were watching from their blinds. "Morning, Mr. Cole," she said sweetly. "We're conducting a follow-up inspection, routine." I glanced at Tom. He avoided my gaze. "Routine," I repeated. "At 6 a.m.? Her grin sharpened. "Safety doesn't keep office hours." There it was again, that crisp, rehearsed cruelty. I stepped closer, just enough for her perfume to hit, synthetic and sharp. "You had your men trespass last night. I've got footage. The clipboard queen's expression didn't even flicker. Our officers acted under the authority of Section 14C, Community Perimeter Checks. Perimeter checks don't include my child's bedroom window. Tom flinched. It was quick, but I saw it. The enforcer in crimson noticed too. Her heel clicked once, deliberate. "Careful, Mr. Cole," she said softly. "You're treading close to a defamation claim." "I've built entire cases on footage like this," I replied. "If you're going to threaten me, at least use something original." Her eyes narrowed. "You're still playing detective. And you're still pretending to be one." Behind her, Tom finally spoke, voice barely above a whisper. "Maybe we should let the compliance team handle this one, Patricia." The tyrant in heels turned her head slowly, the smile collapsing. "Tom, if you're uncomfortable executing board policy, perhaps your seat isn't as secure as you think." That was the first crack. The first moment I saw fear, not mine, but his. They left after a few more paper exchanges and threats, but Tom lingered by the sidewalk, pretending to check his notes while muttering under his breath, "She's going too far." It was small, but it was something. I filed it away. That evening, Jenna found me staring at the footage again. "You think he'll talk?" she asked. "Not yet," I said, "but guilt grows fast when you plant it in fear." The next day brought something new, a fine of $5,000 for defensive hostility. There was no such clause in any HOA charter, but that didn't matter. Patricia had built her own legal ecosystem, where intimidation passed for order. When I walked to the mailbox, I saw her across the street, pretending to talk with a neighbor. Every gesture, every glance was performance. She thrived on narrative, the woman who kept the neighborhood safe from dangerous residents. But the officer of rules didn't know I'd started recording her too. Later that week, I saw Tom again, outside the clubhouse this time. His hands trembled as he locked his car. I approached slowly. "You're in over your head," I said. He sighed, eyes tired. "You think I don't know that? She's rewriting minutes, backdating approvals, using the HOA. Fund like her personal wallet, but nobody wants to confront her." "Then help me." He hesitated. "If she finds out I talked, she already suspects you. That's why she's testing you in public. The only way out is through." Tom looked at me for a long moment, jaw tight. "I'll see what I can get, but if anyone asks, this conversation never happened." As he walked away, I saw her red blazer glint through the clubhouse window, watching, always watching. That night, Jenna woke to a noise outside, a faint tapping, like metal on glass. I rushed to the living room. A stone lay on the floor, the window cracked. Attached to it, a note written in rushed, uneven letters. "She knows about the cameras. Be careful." Tom's handwriting. For the first time, fear wasn't abstract. It was tangible, sitting there on my floor. Patricia Langford, the clipboard queen herself, had just escalated the war from rules to retaliation, and I knew that by morning she'd strike again. The next day felt like a standoff. Every curtain on Hawthorne Bluffs seemed half open, every porch light left on in broad daylight. The neighborhood pretending normalcy while waiting for someone to fall. Patricia Langford had turned the place into a stage, and every one of us was performing under her direction. I found a new notice taped to my garage door before sunrise. Mandatory security hearing, non-compliance with board authority. No signature this time, just her initials scrawled in the crimson ink. Even her handwriting looked authoritarian. Sharp angles, no hesitation. Jenna stared at it for a long moment. "She's not stopping, Ethan." "She doesn't know how," I said quietly. By noon, the HOA forum had exploded again. A new thread appeared titled, "Is the Cole family a threat?" It had 50 comments within an hour. Screenshots, cropped photos, wild claims, and every reply either defended her or feared her too much to argue. The enforcer in crimson had mastered digital warfare. Smear first, investigate never. That evening, while Noah napped on the couch, I sat at my desk reviewing footage from the previous night. One frame made my blood freeze. At 11:47 p.m., two silhouettes walked along my fence line. One held a flashlight, the other a clipboard. The board chair's outline was unmistakable. That perfect posture, that deliberate stride. And then she did something I didn't expect. She stopped beneath the oak tree, the one my father planted, and pointed at it. The man with her nodded, wrote something down, and took a photo. My throat tightened. That tree wasn't just wood and roots, it was family. Patricia knew that. She always attacked where it hurt most. The next morning, I found a bright yellow tag hanging from one of the lower branches. Hazardous growth, subject to removal. I tore it down, heart pounding. By the time I looked up, she was already standing at the edge of my lawn, immaculate, smug, clipboard in hand. Safety code violation, she said coolly. Roots extending into common property. I took a step closer. Touch that tree, and you'll need more than code citations to explain what happens next. Her smile didn't move, but her eyes gleamed with triumph. Threats again, Mr. Cole? You're making my case easier every day. You're making mine stronger. Her jaw tightened just slightly. For the first time, a flicker of uncertainty passed through her perfect armor. Then she turned to leave, heels clicking like a countdown. That night, I called Tom Alvarez. He didn't answer. I tried again the next morning. Voicemail. When I finally caught him outside the clubhouse, his face was pale, his shirt untucked. She confronted me, he whispered. Asked if I'd been leaking board information. I told her no, but she didn't believe me. The clipboard queen always had a way of cornering people without ever raising her voice. Fear was her native language. Listen, Tom, I said. If she's threatening you, I can protect you. But I need proof. Something undeniable. He swallowed hard. There's an emergency fund she's been pulling from. Thousands of dollars labeled for security compliance. I can't touch the files without her noticing. Then find me a way in, I told him, before she finds another excuse to inspect my family. That evening, a storm rolled in, thunder rumbling over the cul-de-sac as lights flickered inside the houses. Jenna stood by the window, whispering, "She's out there." Through the sheets of rain, I saw her, the tyrant in heels, standing under an umbrella, perfectly still, staring straight at our house. Her guards waited in the car, headlights on. She didn't move for 5 minutes, just watched. No words, no notices, just presence. It was psychological warfare, and she knew I'd see her silhouette even after she was gone. When the storm finally broke, I walked outside. The oak leaves shimmered with rainwater. Another tag fluttered from a lower branch, laminated this time, sealed against the weather. Final notice, scheduled removal, 8 a.m. I tore it down and crushed it in my hand, rain mixing with sweat. I wasn't angry anymore. I was focused. She'd drawn her line. And now, I was going to show her what happens when a man who's buried too much decides he's done losing what's left. The morning they came for the tree, I was already waiting. Coffee in one hand, camera in the other, heart pounding like a drumline. I'd been up all night reviewing the footage Tom had slipped under my door. A flash drive labeled only Compliance Ledger. When I plugged it in, I saw it. A series of transactions, each marked with Patricia Langford's signature. Thousands of dollars flowing from a neighborhood emergency fund into a private consulting firm, registered under her husband's name. The clipboard queen wasn't just abusing power. She was profiting from it, but I couldn't act yet, not until I had irrefutable proof. At exactly 8 a.m., a white pickup truck rolled in. 2 men in reflective vests stepped out, chainsaw cases in hand. Behind them, a black sedan pulled up, and out stepped the enforcer in crimson herself, heels sharp against the pavement, umbrella in one hand, paperwork in the other. "Morning, Mr. Cole," she called out with false warmth. "You were informed of today's removal." I met her halfway down the driveway. "Informed," I said, "isn't the same as authorized." She smirked. "You don't own the easement, and according to Article 9B, the association retains landscaping jurisdiction." I stepped closer. Article 9B was superseded when your board rewrote the charter without county certification. I checked. That got her. The officer of rules hesitated, lips tightening for a fraction of a second before she recovered. "Even if that's true, I have executive discretion." "Then this," I said, raising my phone, "is your executive mistake." I hit record as the contractors started toward the tree. "You cut one root," I warned, "and you'll be cutting through evidence." Patricia's smile faltered. "Evidence?" I pointed to the camera above the porch. "I've got footage of your unauthorized inspections, of your guards on my property, and of your little meeting at midnight under that same oak tree." The clipboard queen's mask cracked. "You're bluffing." "Am I?" The air between us thickened. The contractors froze, waiting for her signal. Rainwater from the previous night still dripped from the branches, each drop echoing in the silence. Then Tom appeared from around the corner, unshaven, eyes darting nervously. He looked like a man already halfway into confession. "Patricia," he said quietly, "maybe we should postpone this." She turned on him like a predator scenting blood. "Excuse me?" His voice wavered. "You said this was a standard removal, but Ethan's right. The ledger," her hand shot up. "Enough." But it was too late. I already had my camera aimed. "Go on, Tom," I said. "What ledger?" Her face drained of color. "You don't want to do this?" she hissed. He swallowed. "The one with the transfers, the payments to her husband's company." For a second, the entire street fell silent. No cars, no birds, just wind whispering through wet leaves. The tyrant in heels stepped forward, voice dropping to a low growl. "You just ended your career, Tom." He met her stare. "Then maybe I'll start telling the truth." I knew I had it, the break I needed, but before I could press, she turned and ordered the contractors back into their truck. "We'll reschedule," she snapped. "This matter isn't closed." When she left, the entire neighborhood exhaled like a pressure valve releasing. Curtains fluttered, phones lifted. People had been watching, silently recording their queens unraveling. Tom lingered by the curb, trembling. "You've got to move fast," he said. "She'll cover her tracks. The county audit's next week." I nodded. "Then I'll make sure the footage reaches the right hands." That night, I backed everything up to 3 drives, sent copies to a friend at the county attorney's office, and locked one in a safe. But the longer I sat at my desk, the heavier the silence felt. I could feel her presence even in the dark. Patricia Langford didn't retreat. She recalibrated, and by the next morning, I'd know just how far she was willing to go. Because when I stepped outside, my mailbox was gone, ripped clean out of the ground. In its place, a fresh notice fluttered from the fence. "Unauthorized surveillance constitutes a privacy violation, subject to fines and immediate legal action." It was signed again in her hand, but this time she'd added one chilling line at the bottom. "You think you're recording me, Ethan? I'm recording you." I didn't sleep that night. Every creak in the house sounded like a camera shutter, every passing car like surveillance. By dawn, I'd already mapped out 3 possible ways Patricia Langford could retaliate. The clipboard queen wasn't impulsive, she was surgical. And when she struck, she made it look like policy. By mid-morning, I found out how far she'd gone. Jenna came running from the driveway, clutching a folded envelope. "You need to see this." Inside was a printed complaint, not a fine this time, but a petition for restraining order, signed by several neighbors. The accusation? Harassment and defamation against a governing officer. Her signature sat neatly at the bottom, right under the HOA seal. I exhaled slowly. "She's turning the neighborhood into witnesses." Jenna's voice shook. "Can she even do that?" "She can't," I said, "but she can make it look like she can." The tyrant in heels had found her next weapon, social optics. She didn't need proof, she needed panic. I spent the rest of the morning calling residents one by one. Most didn't answer. The few who did whispered apologies. "We can't get involved, Ethan. She's watching." By noon, the HOA forum was ablaze again. My name, my address, even a photo of my badge from an old county newsletter. All posted under a thread titled, "Potential Threat Escalation." I realized then, she'd gone beyond slander. She was baiting me into a public meltdown. At 3 p.m., my phone buzzed with a private message. From Tom Alvarez. Subject, "She's calling for a vote tonight. You're not supposed to know." I didn't hesitate. I grabbed my jacket, printed every financial record from the flash drive, and drove straight to the HOA office. The board chair's SUV was already parked out front. Through the tinted glass of the meeting room, I saw her, calm, composed, commanding. The enforcer in crimson presided like a queen addressing her court. Tom sat 3 seats down, pale and rigid. When I entered, her head turned slowly. "Well, this is irregular," she said, voice dripping with mock surprise. "I heard my name was on the agenda." Her smile never reached her eyes. "Oh, we're simply discussing community safety. But since you're here, perhaps you'd like to comment on the ongoing investigation?" I placed the printed ledgers on the table. "You mean the investigation into your misuse of funds?" The room froze. One of the board members, a retiree named Carol, leaned forward, squinting. "What is this?" "Financial transfers from the HOA's emergency account to a shell company, registered under her husband." Patricia's composure flickered. Then she laughed, short, sharp, performative. "Fabricated data. You've breached community privacy laws, Mr. Cole. I suggest you leave before this becomes criminal trespassing." Tom's voice broke through, trembling but firm. "It's not fabricated. I've seen the account myself." Her head snapped toward him. "You?" He stood, hands shaking but steady in conviction. "You told me it was for infrastructure repairs, but the invoices don't exist, Patricia." The clipboard queen slammed her palm against the table. "You don't know what you're talking about." I leaned forward, lowering my voice. "Everyone here knows. They've just been too afraid to say it." The tension was electric. For the first time, her control faltered. Her nostrils flared, her voice rose. "You're finished here, Cole. You and your family will never—" I cut her off. "This footage is already with the county attorney's office, and the governor's office, too." Silence. Her eyes widened, a flash of genuine fear breaking through her mask. I turned to the board. "You've all been complicit long enough. This ends tonight." I walked out, leaving the papers behind like shrapnel. Through the glass door, I saw her grab them, tearing pages apart with shaking hands. When I reached the parking lot, Tom caught up. "You shouldn't have said that about the governor," he whispered. "I didn't," I said, starting the car. "But she doesn't know that." As I drove away, I saw her silhouette in the rearview mirror, the officer of rules pacing behind the glass, her empire cracking one policy at a time. When the storm finally broke, so did the silence. The neighborhood wasn't pretending anymore. People whispered openly, glancing over their shoulders as they walked their dogs or collected mail. Fear had become part of the air here, thick and invisible, but something was shifting. Patricia Langford could feel it too. Tyrants always know when control starts slipping. That morning, I found Tom waiting near my driveway. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. His eyes darted nervously toward the Thasam street before he spoke. "She's panicking," he said. The board chair called an emergency session, not about the finances, about you. I narrowed my eyes. "Me?" He nodded. "She's saying you've endangered residents, that she's filing a full restraining order." The clipboard queen was cornered, and when cornered, she rewrote reality. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. Tom hesitated. "Because I was in that meeting. I saw what she's hiding, Ethan, and I can't keep pretending anymore." His voice cracked. He wasn't just a whistleblower. He was a man breaking out of captivity. "What did you see?" I asked. He pulled out his phone, hands shaking, and showed me an email thread. The HOA's private correspondence. Buried between the lines were legal threats, payments to a PR firm, and one line that chilled me. "Prepare press statement in case of law enforcement inquiry. Delete all digital copies of compliance reports." I stepped back. "She's destroying evidence." Tom nodded. "And she's using HOA funds to do it." The enforcer in Crimson wasn't just corrupt. She was methodical. Every scandal was another operation. Every cover-up, a signature move. I exhaled slowly. "Tom, you realize once I use this, there's no going back for you." He looked down. "I crossed that line when she told me to spy on your wife." For a moment, the world stopped. The wind, the traffic, even the ticking in my head. "She what?" "She said Sarah's been recording people on her phone. Wanted proof she violated community privacy laws. She wanted me to report back if I saw anything she could twist." The rage hit me like electricity, but beneath it, something else. Clarity. This wasn't personal anymore. It was predatory. I steadied myself. "We're going to the sheriff's office. You'll give a statement." Tom shook his head. "You don't understand. If we go now, she'll destroy everything before they even get a warrant. The officer of rules keeps a duplicate ledger, a physical one, in her home office." I blinked. "How do you know that?" He gave a small, humorless laugh. "She makes me print them every quarter, says digital storage can't be trusted." That was my opening. "Then we need that ledger." He frowned. "You'd have to get inside." "I don't have to," I said, "but someone else can." That night, we sat in my garage with maps, screenshots, and copies of the emails spread across the table. Tom explained the layout. where she stored the files, where her cameras were blind. "You sure about this?" he asked quietly. "Positive," I said. "You wanted to do the right thing. This is it." He sighed, rubbing his temples. "If this goes wrong, she'll ruin me." "If this goes right," I said, "she won't have the power to ruin anyone again." We worked through the details, a plan that wasn't reckless, just risky enough to count. By midnight, Tom drove off, his taillights fading into the dark. I stood there in the driveway, watching the rain start again, hearing the faint echo of thunder somewhere far away. Inside, Jenna waited at the door. "You think he'll do it?" she asked. I hesitated. "He already has." Because by the time the clock struck 1, I got a message. No words, just a photo. A single ledger page, torn from a binder. On it, payments, signatures, and a stamped seal reading, "Confidential, HOA executive access only." And at the bottom, in neat cursive ink, the name that tied it all together. Patricia Langford. The photo Tom sent didn't just confirm her guilt, it detonated it. For weeks, Patricia Langford had operated behind policy and power, hiding behind HOA bylaws like armor, but now her own handwriting, her own signature, was the bullet she didn't see coming. I printed the image and pinned it above my desk. Beneath it, I wrote one sentence. "You built your kingdom on paper. I'll burn it with truth." But truth without timing is just noise. I couldn't go straight to law enforcement yet. Not without chain of custody, not without context. The clipboard queen was too cunning. She'd claim forgery, or worse, file a counterclaim for defamation of an elected community official. I needed precision and patience. By morning, I received another message from Tom. "She knows someone took the ledger. She's tearing the office apart." Of course she was. The enforcer in Crimson didn't tolerate loose ends. If she suspected a mole, she'd find him. And if she couldn't find him, she'd make one. That's when I heard the knock. 3 sharp raps on the door, rhythmic, deliberate. I opened it to find her standing there, raincoat over her usual maroon suit, heels sinking slightly into the wet concrete. "Morning," she said calmly, as if we hadn't been at war for weeks. "Mind if I come in?" I didn't move. "You here on official business?" Her smile was surgical. "Always." Behind her, 2 HOA officers lingered near the curb, clipboard and phone in hand. It was theater, all of it. She wanted an audience. I stepped aside. "Make it quick." She walked in like she owned the place, scanning the living room as if assessing damage. "Lovely home," she murmured. "I remember when your father planted that oak out front. Shame what time does to roots." I clenched my jaw. "Say what you came to say." She turned to face me. "You've been making false accusations against a sitting board president, distributing private materials. I could file for a civil injunction right now." I met her stare. "You could, but you won't." Her brow arched. "And why's that?" "Because you know what I have, and because I already sent copies to people who will bury your career before lunch." For a fraction of a second, her eyes flickered, just enough to betray the truth. Then the officer of rules straightened her coat. "You think this makes you untouchable?" "No," I said evenly. "It makes me dangerous." She stepped closer, lowering her voice. "You're playing with fire, Ethan, and fire doesn't care who started it." Then she leaned in. "But I do." And with that she left, not a single word to her officers. They followed her to the car, whispering as she got in. The moment she drove off, my phone buzzed again. Tom's text was short. "She's planning a press conference tonight. She's going to spin everything." Of course she was. Patricia Langford didn't lose battles. She rewrote them. I needed to get ahead of her. Fast. I called Ryan. My brother's voice came over the line, steady and clipped, the way it always did when something was about to happen. "She's going public?" "Tonight," I said. "She's claiming I doctored HOA records." "Do you have the originals?" "Tom does, but she'll find him soon." There was a pause. Then Ryan said quietly, "Then you'd better make sure she doesn't get to him first." That evening, I drove to Tom's apartment. The blinds were drawn, the lights off. When I knocked, no answer. I tried again, harder this time. "Tom, it's me." The door finally opened a few inches. His voice was barely a whisper. "She sent people?" "Who?" "2 board security contractors. They said they were doing a wellness check. They tried to take my phone. He looked pale, terrified. I could see the fear eating him alive. You need to get out of here, I said. Now. He nodded. There's one more thing, he said, pressing a small USB drive into my palm. It's not just the ledger. It's the audio from the last meeting. You'll want to hear it before the conference. I stared at the drive, heart pounding. Tom, what's on it? He swallowed. Her confession. And before I could react, headlights flashed across the window, her black sedan pulling into the lot. The clipboard queen had come to collect her sins. The moment I saw the sedan's headlights flash across Tom's blinds, instinct kicked in. Back room now, I whispered. He hesitated only a second before ducking out of sight. The officer of rules didn't waste time with subtlety. She thrived on spectacle, the kind that left neighbors peering through curtains and wondering who'd be next. Through the narrow slit in the blinds, I watched Patricia Langford step out, the enforcer in crimson now cloaked in black. Rain slicked the pavement as she marched toward the building, umbrella snapping open with militant precision. 2 men followed, not board members this time. Security contractors, maybe. Or worse. Tom's voice trembled behind me. She won't stop until I'm erased. She's already exposed, I said, forcing calm. That drive you gave me, it's over for her. He shook his head. You don't understand. She doesn't play defense, Ethan. She plays destruction. The front door buzzed. A heavy knock followed, each one louder than the last. Mr. Alvarez, came the voice, crisp and authoritative. HOA security. We need to confirm you're safe and cooperative. I mouthed to Tom, stay silent. The clipboard queen wasn't here to check on him. She was here to confiscate the evidence. The knock stopped. Silence. Then footsteps circling around back. I moved to the hallway window just as her flashlight beam cut through the rain. Her face looked carved from ice, eyes narrow, calculating. The tyrant in heels didn't need a warrant. She used intimidation like one. Tom whispered, "What do we do?" I pulled out my phone, already dialing Ryan. "We end this." He picked up immediately. "Where are you?" "At Tom's place. She's here." "Stay put," Ryan ordered. "I'm 10 minutes out." I ended the call and turned to Tom. "She thinks she's untouchable because no one's ever pushed back. That ends tonight." We crouched by the window, watching her circle closer. She was on the phone now, probably staging her narrative in real time, reporting a disturbance. It was her favorite move. Weaponize protocol, twist perception. My heart pounded as her flashlight scanned the window. For a second, the beam landed square on my face. Her lips curled into a knowing smirk. She'd seen me. Then came the sound. The click of her heel on the back steps, slow, deliberate. The clipboard queen was coming in. "Tom," I whispered, "out the side door, now." He froze. "I can't." "Yes, you can. Get to my car and wait. Go." He bolted, slipping out the side while I stayed behind. The front door handle rattled once, then again. I stepped forward. "Don't do it, Patricia." Her voice cut through the door like glass. "You're harboring stolen property, Ethan. That's obstruction." "Funny," I said. "I thought obstruction was deleting compliance records." There was a pause, just long enough to confirm she knew I wasn't bluffing. Then she spoke again, quieter this time. "You think your badge gives you leverage? You're one man. I built this community." "No," I said. "You built a stage, and you forgot the cameras work both ways." I heard sirens in the distance, faint at first, then growing. Her tone shifted, panic leaking through her veneer. "What did you do?" "You wanted an audience," I said, stepping to the door. "You're about to get one." The blue lights hit her before Ryan's voice did. "Hands where I can see them." She froze, rain streaking down her umbrella as she turned. For the first time, the enforcer in crimson looked small, drenched, cornered, human. Ryan's team moved in, swift and silent, surrounding her like the storm itself. Inside, I sank into a chair, breath heavy, hands trembling. The fight wasn't over, but the tide had turned. When Ryan entered, his face was unreadable. "We got her," he said. "And Tom's safe." Outside, Patricia Langford stood in the downpour, flanked by officers. Her perfect hair ruined, her clipboard abandoned in the mud. The tyrant in heels had finally slipped. The storm didn't end when Patricia Langford was surrounded. It only changed shape. By morning, the board chair was out on bail, her lawyer already spinning a tale of wrongful detainment and community harassment. The enforcer in crimson had traded her clipboard for a press podium, and like every tyrant who'd lost control, she was now rewriting history one microphone at a time. The local news station replayed her statement on loop. "I've been the victim of a smear campaign orchestrated by a disgruntled resident with a vendetta against this community. She even had the audacity to frame herself as a hero, protecting neighborhood safety against rogue elements." I watched from my kitchen, jaw tight, as the camera panned over Maple Ridge's familiar streets, the same ones where my daughter used to ride her bike, where 50 people had watched her fire that gun. Now she stood in front of the same clubhouse, painting herself as the martyr. Ryan called before the broadcast ended. "She's trying to contaminate public perception," he said flatly. "She's succeeding," I muttered. "Half the comments already call her a victim." "She's scared. It's a strategy of desperation. But Ethan," his tone dropped, "you need to be careful. She's filing a defamation counterclaim." I almost laughed. "She shot a child, Ryan. My child." "She's not fighting the facts anymore," he said quietly. "She's fighting the narrative." That sentence stuck with me, because that's what Patricia Langford had always done. Control the story before anyone could question the truth. By noon, my phone was buzzing nonstop. Neighbors calling, journalists asking for statements, reporters parked outside the gate. I ignored all of them. Instead, I went to the source. The HOA's main office sat quiet that day. Too quiet. The blinds drawn, the closed for system maintenance sign taped crookedly on the glass. But I knew she was inside. The tyrant in heels never left her throne willingly. I walked around the side, down the narrow walkway where the HVAC units buzzed faintly. I'd been there once before, months ago, when this all started. Now it felt like walking through a crime scene. Through the side window, I could see her inside, hair perfect, suit pressed, phone in hand, pacing. The clipboard queen was running her empire from behind locked doors, even as it crumbled. When I knocked, she froze. Then slowly, she turned. For a heartbeat, our eyes met through the glass. The calm cracked first. She hung up the phone and opened the door just wide enough to speak. "You have no right to be here." "Neither did you," I said, her lips pressed into a tight line. "You think this ends with your outrage? It doesn't. I'll rebuild. These people need me." "Need you?" I echoed. "You poisoned every part of this place." The clipboard queen stepped closer, lowering her voice to a near whisper. "Do you really believe they'll ever forgive you? You brought the police here. You dragged the name of this community through mud. You turned neighbors into enemies." I stared at her, every muscle in my body begging to react, but I stayed still. "No, Patricia. You did that the day you pulled that trigger." Her expression faltered for just a second. Then her mask returned. "You can't prove intent." "Maybe not in a courtroom," I said, "but I can prove motive." Her brows knit. "Motive? You've been hiding something bigger than negligence," I said. "That safety fund you siphoned from property dues, those fake invoices to a security contractor that doesn't exist? I've seen the transfers." For the first time, the color drained from her face. I leaned closer. "You didn't just commit a crime, you committed fraud." She backed away, gripping the door. "You have no evidence." "Oh, I do," I said quietly. "And by tonight, the entire state will have it too." Before she could respond, my phone buzzed. A live notification. Ryan had uploaded the files. Every record, every payment, every falsified report now mirrored on the county ethics server. The clipboard queen's phone chimed seconds later. Her lawyer's name flashed across the screen. She didn't answer. She just looked at me with something new in her eyes. Fear. I stepped back from the doorway. "This is the part where you stop talking and start listening." As I turned away, her voice cracked through the silence. No longer steady, no longer powerful. "You don't understand what you've started, Ethan." I didn't turn back. "You're right," I said. I finished it. The board meeting was supposed to be routine. Budget votes, landscaping reports, and noise complaints. Instead, it became a courtroom without walls. Every seat in the Maple Ridge clubhouse was filled that night. Neighbors packed shoulder to shoulder, murmuring in disbelief. The air smelled of rain and tension. At the front of the room, beneath the HOA banner, stood Patricia Langford, the board chair, the enforcer in crimson, the same woman who had turned order into a weapon. Her crimson blazer shimmered under the fluorescent lights, confidence painted over panic. She stood behind the podium, chin high, voice steady. "Tonight," she began, "we address the dangerous rumors being spread about this board and about me." I stayed near the back, arms crossed. Ryan was beside me, recording. Tom sat 2 rows ahead, pale but resolute. He'd agreed to testify, even if it meant revealing how deep the corruption ran. The clipboard queen continued, gesturing toward the crowd like a politician. "False accusations have circulated online," she said. "Harmful, misleading claims about misuse of funds and violence. I assure you, none of them are true. This community deserves facts, not hysteria." I waited until she paused for applause. None came. The silence stretched long enough for everyone to hear her swallow. That's when I stepped forward. "Then, let's give them facts," I said. Heads turned, cameras lifted. The tyrant in heels stiffened behind her podium. "Mr. Pierce," she said carefully, "this is a board proceeding. You are not recognized to—" "You don't need to recognize me," I interrupted. "You just need to listen." I pulled the small flash drive from my pocket, the one Tom had handed me. Ryan connected it to the projector. Within seconds, the screen behind Patricia flickered to life. The room filled with static, then her own voice echoed through the speakers. "We'll handle it internally, no police. If the father pushes back, he'll regret it." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Patricia froze. The enforcer in crimson stared at the recording as if trying to will it silent. But it kept playing. Her own words, calm and deliberate, instructing her staff to suppress evidence of the shooting and forge financial records to cover liability. Neighbors whispered her name like it was cursed. Someone stood up near the back. "You said the safety fund was for us," another shouted. Patricia slammed her palm on the podium. "That recording is doctored." I met her eyes. "It came from your office server, time-stamped, unedited, and verified by the county auditor this morning." Ryan pulled out a printed affidavit, holding it up. "Signed and sealed." The officer of rules faltered. Her gaze darted across the crowd, to the neighbors who once adored her, to the very people she'd ruled through fear and fine slips. "Please," she said, voice breaking. "You don't understand. This isn't how it looks." Tom stood. "I do understand," he said quietly. "I worked for you, Patricia. I followed your orders until I realized what they cost." Her eyes widened. "Tom, you're making a mistake." "No," he said. "You made it when you forgot these weren't just properties. They were people." The tension snapped. Voices erupted. Phones recorded. Chairs scraped as neighbors surged forward, shouting questions, demanding answers. Patricia's composure shattered. The clipboard queen looked around helplessly, cornered by her own creation. "This meeting is adjourned," she cried, but no one listened. The HOA vice chair stepped up beside her, a man who'd stayed silent for too long. "No, Patricia," he said, "you're adjourned." Security entered moments later, escorting her away as the crowd watched in stunned silence. Her crimson blazer brushed against the doorway as she passed. The final flash of defiance from the woman who'd ruled Maple Ridge with a pen and a threat. "Mr. Poor." The room quieted. Ryan leaned toward me. "You did it," he whispered. I looked around at the faces. Neighbors who'd been fined, threatened, silenced, now free to speak without fear. "No," I said softly. "We did." When Patricia Langford turned for one last look, her eyes met mine. For the first time, she looked small, stripped of power, shielded only by regret. And for the first time, Maple Ridge exhaled. The morning after the meeting, sunlight crept through the blinds of my living room, cutting sharp across the floor where the chaos had ended. The community was quiet for the first time in months. Eerily quiet. But beneath that silence was something new. Freedom. The board chair, Patricia Langford, had been taken into county custody overnight. The official statement listed fraud, obstruction of justice, and reckless endangerment. Her empire of fines, threats, and manipulation had finally folded under its own weight. Still, part of me couldn't rest. I kept thinking of the moment she turned back at the clubhouse doors, her eyes glassy, not with defiance this time, but disbelief. For a woman who lived off control, losing it must have felt like drowning. Tom arrived mid-morning, holding 2 cups of coffee. He looked different, lighter somehow. "They froze the HOA accounts," he said. "Investigators traced every dollar. Turns out you were right. Half of it never went to maintenance or safety. It went straight into her personal real estate trust." I exhaled slowly. "She built her castle out of everyone's peace." He nodded. "And now, it's collapsing." Across the street, neighbors were already peeling off the old HOA bulletins, the decency codes, the fines and warnings, the notices signed by the enforcer in crimson herself. The street looked alive again. A few kids rode bikes down the cul-de-sac, laughter echoing off the pavement where fear used to live. Ryan pulled up moments later, still in uniform. He gave me that look, the half smile that always said, "You did good, brother." "It's official," he said. "The DA's office is pressing full charges. She'll face trial in 2 weeks." "What about the HOA?" I asked. "Temporary oversight," he said. "Residents will vote on a new interim committee next month. You're already on the ballot, by the way." I shook my head. "I'm not interested in titles. I just want this place to breathe again." He grinned. "That's exactly why they want you." From across the yard, an elderly neighbor waved. Mr. Jensen, the same man who'd once whispered, "Don't make her angry, son." Now, he looked 10 years younger. That's when I realized this wasn't just about my daughter or about Patricia Langford. It was about every person who'd ever been silenced by someone with a clipboard and authority they didn't deserve. Later that afternoon, I walked down to the clubhouse. The door was unguarded now, its brass plaque, still reading "Property of Brookhaven HOA." Inside, the air felt different, less like a throne room, more like a ghost town. The clipboard queen's desk sat empty, papers still scattered, her signature visible on half of them. One caught my eye, an old inspection report from years ago, when she first took power. Her handwriting was sharp and arrogant. "Community image is not negotiable." I smiled faintly and folded it in half. "Neither is decency," I whispered. That night, the neighborhood gathered under the oak tree, the one my father had planted before I was born. The roots ran deep, like the memory of everyone who'd lived and struggled here. We strung lights through its branches, shared food, laughter, and for once, stories that didn't end in fines or threats. Tom took the makeshift stage we'd built. "We thought this place was cursed," he said. "Turns out it just needed its people back." Ryan raised a toast. "To justice, the real kind." I looked at my daughter, asleep in Sarah's arms, safe beneath the tree. The scars would take time to heal, but this was the beginning. I stepped forward to address the crowd. "They say power corrupts," I said. "But here, it woke us up. We learned that silence feeds tyrants, and truth—" I paused, glancing toward the empty clubhouse window. "Truth makes them crumble. If you believe ordinary homeowners can still stand up to HOA tyranny, hit subscribe now. Share your own story in the comments, and tell me where you're watching from, because every neighborhood deserves a voice." Applause rose around me, and for the first time since all of this began, the sound didn't echo off fear. It echoed off freedom.